Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Live at the Waterhole in association with African and Wild Earth. We've started out at Mantis Founders Lodge at Eastern Cape, and what a beautiful view we have. Some zebras, and it looks like we have a couple of wallowing rhinoceri as well. Very, very special ways to start the afternoon. My name is Ben Coley. I will be with you for the next couple of hours, and as always, I would be delighted to answer any questions or comments or anything like that that you'd like to send through. Remember, this is a live show, so anything you want to ask, please go ahead. I don't claim to know the answer to everything, but I will always claim to do my best. And I will try and find out the answer to things that I do not know. But I'd love to hear where you're all from, what you're up to today. I hope you've got a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in hand and are looking forward to our daily whirlwind tour through all of our different cameras across southern and eastern Africa. But what a wonderful way to start. Very lazy rhinoceroses and zebras thinking, what on earth are you doing? Why are you being so lazy? But it is a Sunday after all, so why not? Looks like this one is having a bit of a dibble of the other one, which is a little unusual, but a pretty good way to spend a nice Sunday afternoon, I propose. Not sure what he's doing there. Not normal behavior to see a rhino nibbling another rhino. I can only assume it's either some form of uh, tactile communication that we are seeing, some sort of bond establishment, or possibly having a scrap gets from the caked mud that is on there. But you never know what you're going to see. The textbooks do not tell us everything. There is no substitute for observation and trying to put two and two together, although unfortunately we often end up at about 18. But yeah, unusual behavior. I don't think I have ever seen a rhino nibbling or nuzzling against one. You can see he's been there for a while. You can see that sort of stain on the thigh there. You certainly don't see much grooming go on between rhinos. We expect it in things like baboons and even antelope species, particularly the impala, are well known to groom one another. But I have never heard or seen it in rhinos. And so it seems to be a very specific area that this rhino is working on. So there must be a reason. If any of you have any suggestions, please do send it in. I open this one up just so you never know what you're going to see. Looks like it's a youngish female. If it was a younger male, you could potentially argue that he was trying to curry some favor. This almost a little bit annoyed by the presence of that youngster there. You can see by the way the tail is curled up. It's often a sign of behavioral anxiety or stress in rhinos. Oh, it doesn't seem too fussed. Perhaps it was a youngster who was trying to stimulate mum to allow her to have some more milk, but at that age she should not be requiring any milk. And that, assuming that is still that female's calf, if that is a female on the right, a little bit too old really to still be hanging around. But behaviors are changing with the population shifts and the pressure that rhinos are under. It wouldn't surprise me if youngsters are staying with adults for a little bit longer. Potentially the birth interval will be greater because there's not so much opportunity in terms of mating. And maybe as a form of protection, stay with mum for a little bit longer. But yeah, I think she's trying to get into the teats there by the look of it. But assuming that is mum, she does not look particularly keen on the idea. But I'd say this youngster is a good 2 or 3 years old, which would still be quite a good. Oh, yes, did you hear that little wee? That's classic rhino, please, I want some milk. So evidently there is something to be had there. I see, that's a shame. It seems we've had a few camera issues there down at Founders Lodge. Hopefully we'll be able to go back and see what's happening there, but that was very interesting to watch. So we've shot over to Tembe Elephant Park in Maputo land on the eastern side of the country, where our usual group of elephant bulls are enjoying themselves at this spectacular waterhole here. Right, DMV, good afternoon to you. You always thought rhinos were solitary until you started watching live at the waterhole. Um, yeah, they are a little bit more social than they were once thought to be, certainly. More so white rhino than black rhino, although recent research, I say recent, sort of from 10 years ago or so, has shown that black rhino are more sociable than we thought up till recently as well. I mean, I have seen big groups of rhinos over the years. Unfortunately, seeing big groups nowadays doesn't happen very often for all of the terrible reasons that we know all too well, unfortunately. But I remember at one point many years ago, I'm going back probably 12 or 14 years ago, I remember seeing a group of 14 of them all basically hanging out together. So a proper herd or a crash of rhino, as the collective noun states. But generally speaking, it's not unusual to find a few females and their previous offspring hanging around, or potentially even some juveniles once a juvenile has left mum, which normally happens when she gives birth to the next baby. Then that youngster isn't fully grown yet and will often associate with other juveniles, and they will also often sort of hang out with other groups of adults. If it is females with young calves, they won't be allowed to get too close, but they're tolerated in the area. And very much the idea is that they are just there for a little bit of emotional support and security. So it's quite, well, not unusual to see small groups even today of sort of 4 or 5 that hang out in association with one another. Of course, once they get to maturity, things do change a little bit depending on the sexes. So the females, again, quite often that you'll see 2 or 3 adult females and youngsters hanging out together. But the males, once they become sexually mature, they will generally go off on their own. And once they have established a territory, they will become very much solitary and they will defend that territory against any potential interlopers, although they will tolerate other males, so long as the visiting male does not make any sort of play towards any potential females that are in that area. So they are quite tolerant of each other. And those males that have not yet been able to establish territory, again, you can get little bachelor groups of 2 or 3 bulls hanging out together as well. There was some very interesting footage there. I remember it was many years ago now, sort of a decade ago. It came off of one of, I think it was a BBC documentary where they had night vision cameras. I think it was in Etosha, or it was somewhere in Namibia, and they were recording the water holes well after dark. And they were very surprised by the number of black rhino that came down and the way that they did seem to interact with each other. And there seemed to be greetings amongst individuals, obviously seemed some form of recognition. So not as highly sociable as white rhinos can be, but certainly more going on in the black rhino community than we at first thought. But unfortunately, being so few of them around, we do have a somewhat limited sample size from which to try and ascertain these sort of specific details. A couple of hardy-dar ibises and what some other storks there. I'm just trying to figure out what they are. Are they white storks, yellow-billed storks, woolly-necked stork? I think they look like yellow-billed storks. No, it wasn't hardy-dar ibis. My apologies. The one on the left is a woolly-necked stork. Yes, definitely yellow-billed storks there. This one's got top spot. Looks like some recent activity on that termite mound. You can see from the darker soil there. Not often that you see storks potentially feeding out of the water. You normally see them sort of wading through the water with their beaks open, just waiting for anything to touch that mandible, which will then snap shut. What's to say, a little bit like a mousetrap. But I'm wondering if there hasn't been a termite emergence there, and they are making use of that additional protein.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility.
Would you like to see the awesome sight of Africa's biggest tuskers in the shadow of ancient Mount Kilimanjaro? Or a pride of 20 lions hunting in the grasslands of the Masai Mara? Join me, James Hendry, on the unique Kenyan adventure to Amboseli and the Mara. There are only 6 places on this unforgettable safari in May 2025. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Join the Wild Earth Explorers program and connect with a community passionate about wildlife. Support our mission to share authentic wildlife experiences with the world. Your monthly contribution helps provide schools and children access to kids' safaris, fostering a love for nature in the next generation. Embrace the wonders of the bush and make a difference today. Wild Earth, connecting with nature.
Whatever you want to call it, they will bring it up and deposit it on the top, and they've got special salivary glands that have a sort of a gluey texture, and they, just like we would lay bricks to build a house, they paste these individual grains or little boluses of individual grains that they make one next to the other, and slowly over many years these mounds start to form. And quite often, depending on the species, if you get what we call the small fungus-growing termites, the hodotermes, I think. Oh no, hang on, those are the grass ones. What are the small fungus-growing termites? I can't think of the name of that particular family group, but they have sort of open flutes that they create. So these open chimneys, and you can often look down there, particularly in the summer after the rains. And you'll see loads and loads of little workers busying themselves, usually in association with the much larger soldiers with those big mandibles. And if you get too close or you disturb them, you'll see very quickly the workers will disappear and the soldiers will form this protective ring around the opening to try and ward off any potential predators. You'll often see them sort of vibrating and tapping their abdomen against the ground. That's sending signals. There'll be pheromones being released, danger pheromones, and these vibrations will be being picked up by other members, and that will send those intercolonial messages for some to go to safety and for the battalions of soldiers to start congregating at the source of the disturbance. Lorna, you're asking why some mounds are round and others are pointed. Well, a lot of it has to do with the different species. There are lots of different termite species, and I've tried to delve into whether or not you can sort of individualize the shape of a mound with regard to the specific species that has created it. I even went to a talk not that long ago on termites and asked the experts, and they said it's so difficult to know because you might have one large mound, but within that large mound might be two or three different species of termites occupying different areas of the mound. So it's very, very hard to say, really. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the different species, just like the way, for example, the weaver birds create different shaped nests. You also have to bear in mind the age of the mound and the weather conditions, because even ones that may have started out as sharp and pointy may have become weathered over the years by rain and by wind and abrasive erosional forces from dust. Maybe an elephant leans on one for a scratch and breaks the chimney, and that collapses, and then it's rebuilt. Then also not being quite such a spire structure. There is this idea that a lot of those termite mounds do point to the north, and there is some truth in that. We're still not quite sure why. Is it something to do that here in the southern hemisphere, the sun is closer to the north because that's where the equator is? It might be something to do with the magnetic field lines of the Earth, because we know a lot of insects do respond to those. The one that makes the most sense to me from an architectural standpoint is when these spires are built. Um, the northern facing side of the termite mound will get more sun because that's where the sun is here in the southern hemisphere. So that tends to dry out more quickly in the sun. That causes it to contract and sort of pulls the tip of the mound in that direction because that soil is contracting, stretching the far side and contracting the near side. So again, lots of theories, but until we can speak termite and ask them, we will never really know for sure. But certainly I noticed it. I remember being out in Namibia a few years ago in a very sort of desolate area with not much vegetation, because obviously shade will have an impact on that drying out of that heating capacity of it all. But I remember seeing one very large tract of land with multiple spired termite mounds there, and they were all pointing to the north. It's quite strange when you see it. Marula shortcake. No, termites don't particularly like the heat, and they certainly don't like direct sunlight. That's why they live underground. If you've ever seen a termite, they are very white in color. They lack melanin in their bodies. So the opposite of ants. So melanin manifests as a very dark coloration. That's why those of you with darker skin do better in sunlight than people like me who are pasty white, unfortunately. So that's why they're nocturnal. And even if they are out and about during the day, they will often build those little tunnels. You may well have seen them going up and down branches on trees. And if you were to crack open that, it's quite normal to find the little termites running and scurrying around under there out of direct sunlight. But temperature is important. They do need a fairly stable and humid environment because of their diet. I'm sure many of you know this, but those large mounds are created by the fungus growing termites. And whilst they do go out and they collect the dead wood, they lack the sort of sufficient digestive enzymes to be able to get enough nutrition out of dead wood. So what they generally do is will bring it back to the mound. They will then defecate it out, form these sort of combs upon which a very specific type of fungus that you only find in fungus growing termite mounds then grows upon. And in some species, the termites will actually feed on that fungus, but what they're actually doing is that fungus is then using its hyphae and the enzymes contained within the fungus to break down that dead wood and create more of a sort of a pulpy material that the termites can then actually feed on and extract a sufficient amount of nutrients. So that fungus is very, very specific to the temperature range that it requires in order to grow successfully, arguing at sort of between about 3 or 4 degrees only. So that's the whole idea of the structure of the mound, making use of the sort of air conditioning effects that it has, the way they open and close little chambers to regulate the temperature inside. It's all designed to create a nice, stable, warm, humid environment for that fungus because it is so important for them. It's what we call an obligatory mutualism. The fungus and the termites rely on one another, and without each other, neither would survive. Good afternoon, Mo. Yes, elephants and many other animals do like to feed on termite mounds, as you suggested, because it tastes better. You can see here this mound, the grass around the base, there's hardly any of it there, and what you can see is very, very short. For exactly that reason, you have to remember there's so much activity going on underneath that mound that it becomes what we call a nutrient hotspot. So you've got all the activity of the termites, they're circulating the soil, bringing up nutrients from deep under the ground. All the little tunnels are allowing aeration of oxygen and other chemicals through there. You've got termites dying, which is also putting nutrients back into the soil. So generally speaking, things grow better on or around termite mounds, and therefore they hold a higher nutritional value, a better palatability index. And you'll often see animals feeding on or around termite mounds. Very normal, particularly in the winter months when there is very little other fodder for grazing animals. And it's quite normal to see almost like fairy circles around a termite mound where you'll see that there's very, very cropped grass in maybe a sort of a 5 or 7 meter radius around the termite mound. And then there'll be a big wall of grass. And that will actually give you a good idea for just how large the underground part of the mound is. Remember, it's a little bit like an iceberg. Much of what's going on is hidden beneath the surface, and we just get to see that structure on the top. So absolutely, Mo, yes, grass tastes better on and around termite mounds. And you can even see that it's, again, depends on the environmental situation, but if you are in an area that's perhaps somewhere that was only recently made a reserve, and you'll find a lot of trees all started to grow at the same time. You often see that with something like red bush willows, which can be an encroaching species. You'll see the majority of the bush willows all around you will be the same height because they're all growing at the same rate. But ones on or very close to termite mounds will quite often be significantly taller than the trees surrounding it because, again, those trees have more access to all of those nutrients for the reasons we were just discussing.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility. Join Wild Earth presenter Amy Krantz for an unforgettable 5-night adventure at Mabulag Private Game Reserve. This exclusive tour offers unique safaris, a magical hot air balloon ride, and the rare opportunity to participate in a rhino darting mission. If you want to make lifelong friends and memories, then this one's for you. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive. Chatting around a fire is an ancient practice that has connected humanity for centuries, and we want to keep it alive in our modern age. As an explorer, you'll have access to intimate gatherings with our naturalists, fascinating guests, and experts where we share knowledge, insights, and stories around a crackling fire. Rediscover the power of connection. Sign up to be an explorer today and experience the magic of Wild Earth's fireside chats.
These elephants thoroughly enjoying life in the shade there, having a lovely dust bath. Everybody looks very relaxed today. But I want to share more about my wonderful day of birding. But before we do that, I think we're going to head back over to Founder's Lodge. Hopefully that camera is a little more stable now. That's it. The runners have been displaced by the warthogs. Also thought that was a very good idea to have a little bit of a splash around in the mud. I think it looks as if we found an extra rhino as well. It looks like 4 now. A little bit of a warthog dance. Can you hear the African hoopoo in the background? Hoop, hoop, hoop. But say, back to my wonderful day of birding yesterday. I ended up with about 46 species along the Blyder River there. But obviously the finfoot was the highlight. But the other one, which as far as I can remember, only the second time I have ever seen one, was a beautiful sighting of a half-collared kingfisher, which is that sort of stereotypically classical iridescent blue color, a little bit of white around its face. So similar to a malachite, but probably double the size of a malachite. And again, very similar sort of habitat requirements for the half-collared as it would be for the finfoot. They like nice, clean, open, well-vegetated rivers. And had a lovely view of him sitting on a little stump, and actually watched him catch 2 fish during that time. dove down into the water, grabbed two little fish, watched him beat the poor little fish into submission and then swallow it whole. Still amazes me how they can swallow such a large fish compared to their body size and then still be hungry, amazingly, after that. But that was very, very special. And also a pair of giant kingfishers, which managed to establish where they had a nest. And we saw the giant kingfisher female going in and out of that, the sort of the hole nest that they make in the bank, which upon doing a little bit of research, I discovered that that hole can be as deep as 9 meters into the bank, which seems ridiculously large. But they should be in breeding season at the moment, so I'm going to keep a very close eye on that, and maybe I get to see some giant kingfishers fledge, which would be very special. But that calf is a little smaller than I at first realised. Now that I see them all standing next to one another, definitely mum and daughter. But coming to the end of its milk requirements, I would think by now, but always lovely to hear those little squeals, those little squeaks of feed me, feed me, feed me. But not unusual to see white rhinos relaxing during the day and having a bit of a snooze. On average, if I recall, they sleep sort of 7, 8 hours a day, like an elephant, which might only grab an hour or two of sleep in a 24-hour period, often whilst standing up. Rhinos are a little bit more lethargic. But still constantly aware. Look at those little radar dish ears. Not missing very much, picking up all the sounds. See that lovely conical shape, perfectly designed for capturing sound in the environment. I think I've just noticed there's a giraffe in the background as well. You see a neck sticking out. Cherry, how important is it to diversify the rhino genes? Well, very important. I can't give you sort of specifics. I'm not a geneticist or anything like that, unfortunately. But as with any species, you need diversity in order to allow adaptation and to allow evolution. So yes, it is important. I can certainly tell you that, but I can't sort of give you a figure as to how important. But it is why there are a lot of initiatives whereby adults are moved around to ensure better genetic diversity. So it is very important, but I don't know how to sort of substantiate its importance for you. But it's also really to avoid the opportunity of inbreeding as well. What a lovely collection we've got going on here. We've had zebras, warthogs, rhinos, and a skulking giraffe in the background. Possibly some wildebeest way in the distance. No peace for mum. How sweet's that? All lying on top of each other. I said the little ones are bored. Attention to me, attention, attention. How cute. Pretty well placed rock to have a good scratch. Jeremiah asking, why do warthogs flood the market? Obviously, I assume you're referring to all having their babies at the same time. Well, it's not just warthogs, it's many animals do the same thing. You're asking, is it intentional or part of their breeding pattern? I think the answer is more it's the way it's worked out. It is to do with their breeding patterns, but it is ultimately to avoid predation. They don't all sort of look at their watch and go, "Oh, it's time to start breeding." It's all triggered through daylight, the length of sunlight during the course of a day. And the upshot is that they all have a breeding season at around about the same time, and then a calving season around about the same time as well, which ultimately means better protection. If there's more of you around, there's less chance that your individual baby will be predated upon. And we see that with most antelope species as well, particularly impalas, obviously very, very well known for it. They will be having their first births probably next month. Warthogs normally a little bit later, around about December time. Um, but ultimately, it's also done from a resource availability point of view. The breeding season will be based upon their gestation period, which will then be based upon when they give birth. There is the rainy season here in southern Africa, and that means that there will be plenty of food, water, and shelter. So we obviously had a little bit of camera break up there. So we have come over to Nkoro Bush Lodge up in the Sabi Sands, and our old hippo chilling out in the sun. But remember, a lot of these breeding seasons, say it's not a distinct choice. They don't look at their calendar and decide, right, now is the time. So most animals have what's called a pineal gland in their brains, and we can actually see it in lizard species. If you ever get a close-up look of a lizard, you might find there's a kind of a little hole in the top of its head, right in the center, in between the eyes, and that's known as a pineal eye. And it's those glands which subconsciously, if that's the right word, pick up changes in daylight hours. And because the amount of sun present in a particular area changes throughout the course of the year, that has an effect, a knock-on effect to the hormones, to the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, and that causes those glands to start producing the relevant hormones and kickstarts that whole breeding process. So it's not intentional, it is more programmed or evolved.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet. Value, choice, flexibility.
Would you like to see the awesome sight of Africa's biggest tuskers in the shadow of ancient Mount Kilimanjaro? Or a pride of 20 lions hunting in the grasslands of the Masai Mara? Join me, James Hendry, on the unique Kenyan adventure to Amboseli and the Mara. There are only 6 places on this unforgettable safari in May 2025. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive. It was another action-packed week from our locations around South Africa. This is On Safari. Let's go and have a look at the Nkuhuma Pride now. Things are really pretty rough for them and the male dynamics in the area now. Oh no. The most fascinating thing about using a drone was watching wild dogs hunt.
Unfortunately, they face various difficulties.
We as human beings don't greet each other in that manner. Until next time, everybody, we'll be on safari.
Looks like feathers all the way down to the tarsi, all the way down to the feet, which also helps us figure out that it's what we call a true eagle, one of the Aquila genuses, which then helps to narrow it down. Coloration-wise, though, I would likely think it's a tawny eagle, although you do get different morphs, different colour forms. But the most common is this sort of pale brown. Lesser spotted eagle is a little bit thinner, and they have very thin legs, or very thin hair on the legs. Steppe eagle is also another possibility if they are back, but I think this looks a little small for a steppe eagle, and the easiest way to identify a steppe eagle is actually that gape. It's the only one of the eagle species where the gape reaches right to the back of the eye as opposed to the center. So subtle differences, but should easily be able to be seen through a pair of binoculars. Mm. 90% tawny. I'm not suggesting it's a hybrid. 90% sure that it's a tawny eagle. Yeah, Lady Macbeth, I agree with you. A bit early for steppe eagles, as I said. But you never know. Things are changing with global warming and different climates. But yeah, something I'd normally associate with midsummer. Some of the migrants are starting to come back. I mean, just for a best part of a month now, we've been seeing Wahlberg's eagles. So they are most definitely back. Of course, when the steppe eagles do come from the Russian steppe, from Northern Europe, they'll be going through Dubai, where I was last week. And the guys were saying there that they do get quite an influx coming through. And I was actually lucky enough to go to a falconry show whilst I was there. And they had a peregrine falcon. And I was learning all about how the Bedouin people used the peregrine falcons to help them hunt. So every year when those falcons, the peregrines coming from sort of Asia, they come through the Arabian district. And many years ago, they were caught. And then when they were caught, they were trained over the course of a few weeks by the Bedouin people with the lure, and they would go out and they would help them hunt things like rabbits or whatever else it was that they were looking for out there. And then at the end of the season, they would release them, and the birds would carry on doing their thing. And then when the next wave of migration would come through, then they would repeat the process. So sustainable, but very interesting to watch. An incredible bird, that peregrine falcon. So clocked at close to 400 kilometers an hour in a full dive many years ago, the fastest thing on the planet, basically. Oh, we've got some ellies. Some very muddy elephants. Hmm. Did you have a little tumble there, little one, or did you purposely lie down in the mud? I'm going to assume that you fell over, because that's funnier. And see if this little one's going to chase the Hummerkop. No, maybe not this time. Interesting. I don't see any others, or we haven't seen any others yet, but that's a female. Could it be a case of twins? It's possible. Although no, the one at the back is smaller. Good scratch. Well, I think we can say that's definitely mum for this one. Maybe there are some other elephants around, because if it was twins, you'd expect them to be the same size. And I think the one at the back there was a little boy that we saw. So if anything, he should be the larger of the two, or at least equally sized. Haven't been able to sex the one drinking at the moment, but definitely a lot younger. Hmm. Ah, there are some more. He's full of beans, this little one. Excuse my chuckling in the background. I just adore baby elephants. canine girl, I agree. Crazy little Ellies are the best. They just make me smirk and smile goofily. There's something so special about them. They always make me very happy. Just watching them, being around them, watching their antics, their little personalities are just awesome. Um, Inga, are elephant pregnancies high risk? Do they experience complications? I don't know, Inga, if I'm honest. I don't hear too many problems. I have no doubt that occasionally there are issues and fetuses will be aborted. Um, but I don't know if there are any specific risks that they have to be careful of. I guess it's not something we sort of see or get to see very often, the whole process. I'm not sure in a captive situation, but certainly I've never seen an elephant give birth, and I've spent countless hours in and around elephants. I don't know very many people who have seen it. It's a very secretive thing, and the whole herd will be involved and gathers around and very protective and very excitable during that moment. But I honestly don't know if there are any specific complications, particularly in sort of an elephant breeding program that one has to be aware of. I will see if I can find anything out and report back. I see I missed a couple of questions, so my apologies there. Grant DMV, what's so special about Juma and the Sabi Sands area to make it so perfect for leopards? Um, Again, good question, Grant. I don't know. There is an argument to be said that whilst it does have a high density of population, that there are other areas that also have high populations. What makes these areas different is because they have been such a tourist hub for ages, coupled with, I should add, the excellent level of respect and ethics usually shown by the guides in that area. We are just in a very fortunate position to see so many of them, and they are so habituated to vehicles that we get to view them on a regular basis. So whilst the leopard density there is very high, we are also in the very fortunate position to see them all the time. Um, I remember when I first started, in fact, my first full-time job was in the Sabi Sands, but that was sort of a year later. So I did training for 6 months. I did some work placement for 6 months. And I did my work placement in the Balule Game Reserve, so still part of Greater Kruger. And we used to see lots of leopard tracks, but I think in 6 months I saw two leopards. And when I first went to the Sabi Sands and had my interview, one of the guides was saying, "Oh, we haven't seen a leopard for 2 days. I wonder where they've all gone. It's very strange." I honestly thought they were joking because at that point I still believed, as many people do, that it was a real luxury to see a leopard. But there in the Sabi Sands, it is a much, much, much more common occurrence. But in my opinion, just as much due to the habituation levels as it is to a ridiculously high population density. You've also got to remember that a lot of these leopards have come out from Kruger National Park and the surrounding area, the Transfrontier Park, moving into Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And because the Sabi Sands is basically the western boundary, there is a case to be said that a lot of the leopards within Kruger have left their areas looking for new areas. And if they go west into Mozambique, things in the past have not been so good over there, and chances of survival are less. Better protection afforded to the animals due to the rise of tourism closer to the Greater Kruger National Park and those surrounding reserves. And also, the fence acts as sort of a natural uh, buffer zone, and they can only spread so far. And I wonder if there isn't a sort of a bottleneck to some extent because the fence holds back their spread, although they can, of course, go through fences. but again, then put at much greater risk.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility. Ever dreamt of joining our crew on a live safari? Now's your chance. Book a trip to one of our incredible locations through Wild Earth Travel, and you'll have the exclusive option to join our crew on a live safari. Experience the thrill of real-time wildlife adventures and see what happens behind the scenes. Book now at wildearth.travel and be part of the action. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
We understand that not everybody has got spare pennies to rub together at the end of the month. We're introducing an initiative called Gift an Explorer.
So that those with lots of pennies can gift a Wild Earth Explorer access to those with fewer.
We're aiming for 250 gifts, but the more the merrier.
You can nominate a recipient or keep it anonymous.
It's a great way to share the Wild Earth mission with other nature lovers around the world.
Oh, and this elephant has just had too much. Well, that was lovely to see the elephant having a bit of a lie down there. Grant, something else that just sprung to mind as well would be prey availability. Whilst there is a lot of predators in the Sabi Sands, you also have a lot of lodges, and a lot of lodges have water holes next to them, and that automatically attracts game because of permanent water. And that in effect, well, in as a knock-on effect, also attracts predators. So I'm sure that the level of tourism in that regard also plays a role because it's providing a good habitat or good resource availability for prey animals. And where there is prey, there will always be predator. This youngster's just done a nosedive into the mud. What a happy group of elephants. Hmm? This is very special. Another one having a mud bath. Oh, this has been my favourite elephant sighting for quite some time. These beautiful little greetings for this other individual that's come down. Everybody coming over and saying hello. I was waiting for a reaction from that one at the back. The way he was just standing there dangling that front foot. Often a sign of unease. I wondered if we were going to get a little reaction. Look how red that dung is from all the tannins that they've been eating. Not much grass now, so mostly diet of herbaceous material and barks and things, which manifesting in that reddish colour. Oh, shame this little one's really struggling to get through the mud. Come on, grab hold of Mum's tail. Oh, don't get stuck in the mud, little one. How cute is this? It's going to be exhausted after all of this walking through the mud. I agree, Canine Girl. Getting to see all these interactions and behaviors is fascinating. This has been one of the best elephant sightings that I can remember for such a long time. It does help by having a cuteness overload, but just watching the little greetings and the interactions and to be honest, the sheer delight of all these elephants. It's not often you see so many of them going down and rolling around in the mud like this. Very, very special. This little one is absolutely coated in mud now. Now it's going to get covered in dust. Going to sleep well tonight, little one.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility.
Would you like to see the awesome sight of Africa's biggest tuskers in the shadow of ancient Mount Kilimanjaro? Or a pride of 20 lions hunting in the grasslands of the Masai Mara? Join me, James Hendry, on the unique Kenyan adventure to Amboseli and the Mara. There are only 6 places on this unforgettable safari in May 2025. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Join the Wild Earth Explorers program and connect with a community passionate about wildlife. Support our mission to share authentic wildlife experiences with the world. Your monthly contribution helps provide schools and children access to kids safaris, fostering a love for nature in the next generation. Embrace the wonders of the bush and make a difference today. Wild Earth, connecting with nature.
This little one's still enjoying himself. I don't think I've ever seen 2 youngsters, let alone one, floundering around with so much glee. There must be something in the air. Down again. Liverpool bird, I'm glad you're glued to the screen. It is utterly gorgeous. I don't really know what else to say. I'm just going to be quiet and watch it because what can I possibly say to augment what we're watching? Just exactly what it's all about. This is what this Live at the Waterhole show is supposed to be about. Just watching nature do its thing. Sometimes we have busy days, sometimes they're quiet days, and other days they're just utterly spectacular like this. It's another one. Just that's so strange. I don't think I've ever seen so many elephants just plonk themselves down. It's like a big memo went out and said, right, the mud today is absolutely perfect for bathing in. Let's all go and make ourselves as utterly messy as possible and see what happens. Big family spa day. We'll be able to rest for a moment. Second wind, let's go. Scratch, roll. Almost sense that the adults have had enough now and it's time to move on, but they don't want to pull these little ones away. I'm waiting for these two to start playing with each other. They've got so much zest at the moment. It's kind of the only thing missing from this sighting is when they start sort of climbing on top of one another and rolling around together. They seem to be quite happy doing their own thing. The one at the back is still trying to figure out how to throw dust on itself. Hasn't perhaps quite got the coordination to do it properly yet, but is trying to be all mature. Nope, down again. Yeah, it looks like spa time is going to come to an end, but what an absolutely spectacular sighting that was, and still is for that matter. So, so amazing. Grant DMV, yes, I would think the matriarch is going to adjust her pace to suit the younger members of the herd. She'll be very diligent about the well-being of her family. So, yes, especially if she's got her own youngsters. Obviously, they can be problems if they have to migrate over very big distances to get to water or to feeding grounds. But as you said, in this area in particular, there is much water because there are many lodges. And many lodges do have water in front of their lodges, so they don't have to travel over big distances. So yeah, they will very much take it into account and slow down for the little ones. I have no doubt that that youngster at some point today is going to need to just have a good sit down and a bit of a chill because he's expended a huge amount of energy. All that rolling around in the mud is thing, but he's only through that tiny parade at some point. But once the herd from here, I would imagine, on to find somewhere nice to feed, and everything will slow down. And I would not be surprised if that little one just lies down in the grass and doesn't do anything for half an hour whilst everybody else is feeding and just tries to recoup expended. Yeah, well, that was one of the best sightings I've had on live at the waterhole for a long time. But I think we're going to go up to Victoria Falls waterhole now and see what's happening over there. Well, a beautiful fish eagle up here at Vic Falls Safari Lodge, up in Zimbabwe. We had a little helmeted guinea fowl trot past in the background. Such an iconic bird, this one. Strangely, when I was on the Blythe River yesterday, I didn't see or hear a fish eagle, which was a little unusual. I was very much expecting to see one. Didn't get any raptors actually yesterday. You can hear the guinea fowl in the background. Sounds like a squeaky wheelbarrow. I'd say this is a male fish eagle, just as a sort of a judgment of size. Remember, in raptors, the female is normally bigger than the male. Very difficult to do without a comparison. But also, if you look at the white on the chest, female has more white on the chest than the male, and that seems a little bit stunted for me. So I would imagine that this is a male, but hard to say for sure until you see two standing next to each other. It's a good time of year for the fish eagles, with all the water beginning to dry up and the catfish and other things beginning to sort of be trapped in ever decreasing bodies of water. Makes for easy fishing. I remember one or two times, particularly up in the northern Kruger during the midst of winter. We used to have massive groups of things like fish eagles and all the storks taking advantage of the poor catfish, which were, say, rather stuck where they were, and it was just, for want of a better word, like shooting fish in a barrel for the piscivorous fish. Sorry, piscivorous birds.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility. Are you ready for the adventure of a lifetime? Join Wild Earth presenter and expert safari guide Taylor McCurdy for an exclusive one-of-a-kind tour. Join her on a real African safari in both Zimbabwe and Botswana. Taylor's infectious energy, humor, and deep knowledge will make every moment unforgettable. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Only 6 spots available. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive. Chatting around a fire is an ancient practice that has connected humanity for centuries, and we want to keep it alive in our modern age. As an explorer, you'll have access to intimate gatherings with our naturalists, fascinating guests, and experts where we share knowledge, insights, and stories around a crackling fire. Rediscover the power of connection. Sign up to be an explorer today and experience the magic of Wild Earth's Fireside Chats.
Oh, and see how far that water butt was sinking into the mud. Waterbuck very much standing to attention there. Possibly being distracted by something, but say the lodge is off to the left, so maybe a little bit of movement that's just drawn his gaze. And now calls him to run away. Oh, look at the dust devil in the background. That's cool. Interesting the way that this one's got his leg cocked, possibly just to spread out the surface area a little bit on the mud there. Maybe the other foot is sunk in, taking some of that fresher water perhaps that's filtered through the mud rather than that rather scummy looking water we can see in front of him. I'm surprised we don't see more animals feeding off that what looks to be nice lush grass that's growing in those watery areas. Oop, a bit of an altercation. It only really seems to be the waterbuck and occasionally the elephants we see feeding from it. I'm not exactly sure what grass it is, but evidently not the most palatable, otherwise you would think everything would be taking advantage of it. But remember, there's a lot of toxins and things in a lot of these plants that some animals will be better adapted to. One that I was sort of reminding myself about the other day, strangely because I saw one, or somebody had a shirt on the other day which had a print of flame lilies, Gloriosa superba, which is a beautiful flower that we get here. And it's kind of like a hot air balloon, these sort of elongated petals that sort of wrap up and create almost like a balloon shape, called a flame lily. And that is highly, highly toxic, as is many of the things in the lily family, and contains a chemical called um, colchicine. I can't say it properly now. Colchicine, I think it is. Anyway, but it's highly toxic, and is actually being used at the moment for research in cancer prevention and cancer treatment, because it does seem to bind very well to cancer cells and potentially does affect them. But one of the problems is it's so toxic that I believe it's difficult to rather isolate it or use it in the correct amount, that it will only attack the cancer cells and not everything else. But it stops them from replicating, and cancer cells replicate very, very quickly. That's one of the things that makes them very, very dangerous. And then I got sort of sucked into a little bit more research, and having just come back from the Middle East, one of the things that I didn't see, which I was upset not to have done, was a particular type of scorpion that occurs out there, with the rather intimidating name of the death stalker, one of the parabuthids. So the very thick tails, thin pincers, and highly venomous, with very, very potent, strong neurotoxin. Does have the potential to kill a person if you happen to have a bad reaction to it, but certainly would cause a blinding amount of pain should you be stung by one. But apparently that particular species, this death stalker, contains something called a chlorotoxin, which is a peptide, which also readily binds to certain types of cancer cells, and lots of research being done in terms of its use as a cancer treatment, to be able to identify the cancer cells, because it can be monitored sort of seeking out and attaching and binding to those cancer cells, and then potentially being used as some sort of delivery system for the correct medication, because that chlorotoxin sort of seems to seek out those cancer cells. That if you can, I'm not sure what the right word would be, but if you can not inject it, but lace it with the correct cancer treatment, you can sort of deliver it directly to the cancer cells. So still, even now, lots of interesting research being done on natural chemicals that we can potentially use in the medical. Hilary B, you're asking why we don't see very many cheetahs and what's being done to help. Well, there are lots of reasons. As we were discussing earlier about the genetic diversity, there isn't a great number of them left, only about somewhere between 10 and 15,000 wild cheetahs in the world. And many years ago, there were less than that. So there was a bit of a bottleneck in terms of genetic diversity, which hasn't done uh, the species much good. The other sort of main problem is, well, it's the spread of people, habitat loss. They do need very large tracts of land, and they are particularly designed for open areas in order to run very, very quickly. Because of farming and reclaimed farmland and bush encroachment, now it's a lot of the game reserves are not perfect habitat for cheetahs, who prefer more open area as opposed to sort of scrubby shrubland. And the other problem is, because we've sort of had to put fences around these places to protect the wildlife, that has put cheetahs in direct competition with the larger predators, with lion, with leopard, with hyena, whereas they would normally seek out areas with less competition. And unfortunately, many cheetahs do succumb to lion, leopard, and hyena attack, adults and babies alike. And if they do get out of those reserves, they generally end up in sort of farmland in the surrounding areas where people have livestock. They take livestock and then are considered, unfortunately, vermin, where they are removed because they are getting in the way of people's livelihoods. So it's a bit of a difficult one. In terms of what's being done, there are quite a few cheetah organizations. One of the things that I know was implemented or has been implemented in places like Namibia, which is the highest population of wild cheetah anywhere in the world, is that there are certain dogs that are used almost like for protection to keep the cheetahs away from certain areas, which forces them to go into more wild, natural areas and look for prey as opposed to livestock. And that also are rewards that if you as a farmer was to trap a cheetah on your property, there are financial benefits from declaring that animal, and then someone will come and relocate it on your behalf rather than simply removing it, euphemistically speaking. But it is a difficult one for cheetah. You can argue that natural selection is a problem for cheetahs. They went for speed, all the other cat species went for power, and it turns out that in the current climate of how game reserves and the limited space available for these animals is, that power is better than speed. And there are arguments and studies to suggest that if it wasn't for human involvement in the conservation of cheetahs, that the cheetah species may have become extinct by now already. So we're doing what we can. Numbers, as far as I know, are relatively stable in terms of what is there, but there just isn't a large population to begin with. I think, speaking of cats, if you wonder what we're looking at here, we're just doing a quick check of the periphery on the off chance that there are any cats lying in the shade, watching what may or may not be coming down to the water to drink. Quite normal this time of year to find lions hanging out close to waterholes, because the prey species are under water stress, and this is a perfect hunting ground. and there is a resident pride in this area. I've seen lions around Tower Waterhole and hunting around Tower Waterhole after dark on more than one occasion. Those of you with really good eyesight, scan those rocks at the back. Maybe there's a leopard hanging out there, but I imagine they'll probably be in the shade at the moment. Maybe those rocks get incredibly warm, particularly during the summer months. They say that some of those, like granite outcroppings and things, or other exposed rocks, can get up to about 80 degrees Celsius. You could fry an egg on them just like you could on a car bonnet. So not the sort of place that you're going to want to be tanning on, I wouldn't have thought, in the middle of the heat of the day. Nice spur-winged goose having a bit of a filter down there in the mud. And a warthog taking advantage of this nice greenery.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility. 7 nights on safari during the magnificent green season. The rains have stopped, the land is emerald, and there are wild babies everywhere. Meet your favorite presenters.
This is amazing.
And create unforgettable memories on this once-in-a-lifetime adventure.
Thank you for coming along on this little adventure.
The Green Season Grand Tour, only with Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
It was another action-packed week from our locations around South Africa. This is On Safari. Let's go and have a look at the Nkuhuma Pride now. Things are really pretty rough for them and the male dynamics in the area now.
Oh no.
The most fascinating thing about using a drone was watching wild dogs hunt.
Unfortunately, they face various difficulties.
We as human beings don't greet each other in that manner. Until next time, everybody, we'll be on safari.
It was a very statuesque elephant for quite some time there. I wonder if he was listening to something. There was one point where he had his foot cocked and just sort of his toenails on the ground, which there are these ideas. Well, we know for a fact that there are these things called Pacinian corpuscles and the tip of the trunk, and also on the toes of the elephant, which are like a sensory receptive organ. And there are ideas so that when they do that, they are picking up infrasonic vibrations through the ground that's being transferred up the bones in the leg to the top of the shoulder, which is right next to the eardrums and the little bones within the ear. And so the passing on of messages over great distances through seismic vibration, basically. And then had a sudden urge to come down to the water's edge. Slip slide. Actually, happy to see we haven't seen too many animals stuck in the mud. It is a problem this time of year. I've seen it a few times, antelopes and warthogs that have to wade through this very stodgy, sort of gelatinous mud in order to get to a water source. And sometimes that mud is so sticky that they do get trapped there, and it doesn't take long out in the baking sun to succumb to those problems. They expend so much energy attempting to free themselves, and ultimately they just give up and pass on. It's quite unpleasant. I myself, whether I should or shouldn't have done, did once rescue an Inyala that had got stuck in the mud. Unfortunately, we just sort of left it, dragged it out. It was utterly exhausted, didn't fight us at all. Myself and my tracker, when we did take it out, left it under a bush to hopefully recover. We went back to check on it later that day, but unfortunately it hadn't made it. And incredibly, the vultures had pretty much picked it bare within the space of about 6 or 7 hours. But on that particular location, I think in the space of about a week, we saw, well, I think 3 or 4 antelope species and a few warthogs that suffered the same fate, unfortunately. Okay, well, this little elephant seems to be managing to negotiate the little mud field, but I think we're going to go back down to Founder's Lodge in the Eastern Cape and see what's joined at the waterhole down there. Wow, look at all the rhinos at Mantis Founder's Lodge. We started out with 3, then we were up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 5 now. They are multiplying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I count 7 there now. Spectacular. Hilary B, have I ever seen elephants protect another species from lions or leopards? So my dramatic pause there was dredging the memory banks over years of watching animals. Not that I can specifically think of where, certainly not anywhere where I'd say an elephant has come to the aid of an animal. I have seen lions hunting things and an elephant happens to be in the vicinity and the elephant has decided it's had enough of this and has chased lions away, but I would never anything that made me think, wow, that elephant has rushed to the aid of that particular species. But elephants don't like lions, particularly if there are calves involved, and they will actively chase them out of an area which might have the beneficial effect of an animal that was being hunted. I've seen elephants chase lions repeatedly, and leopard for that matter, but not an incident that I can think of where another species has directly benefited from it. Again, as much as I'd like to romanticize it, I don't think the animal thinks, oh, my friend Fred the impala is in danger, I must go and help him. It's rather instinct to get rid of the nasty predatory cat species. There have, of course, been various reports of hippos coming to the aid of animals that have been stuck and being attacked by crocodiles. That one I think is a little bit more difficult to explain. I've seen footage of a hippo sort of helping an impala out of the mud and kind of pushing it, or if it was an impala, I can't remember, but an antelope, and sort of pushing it more to dry land. Now, that is an unusual behavior to explain, certainly. Look at this beautiful rhino. Ew. Almost looks like a fairly, say, defensive posture, but more sort of aggressive posture, as if controlling his kraal. Difficult to sex them now, but possibly this is the dominant bull area who's feeling particularly proud of himself, if those are all females at the back. And he's doing his bit just in case any other rhino thinks to approach his little harem. He's going to look all intimidating. It looks very much on the watch. Because if those are all females, this is every rhino's dream, and this is the epitome of why a bull holds a territory of good quality, where there's good graze and there's good water. And he's always hoping that the females will come into his area and give him the opportunity to breed. So remember, just holding a territory is no guarantee of breeding rights. You hold a territory in the hope that females who are not territorial will enter your territory and give you opportunity. And generally speaking, the biggest, strongest, most dominant rhino bull will hold the best territory, and therefore give him the best chance to attract females to that area and the best chance to pass on those genetics. And for the female, it passes on probably the best genetics because the strongest bull is holding the best territory. So it's all a knock-on effect. Again, not planned, but nature's strategy for passing on the best genetics where possible.
Welcome to a new era of seamless travel. Enjoy a hassle-free ticket purchase system with an effortless check-in, offering unbeatable value and a variety of options. Redefine business travel with Africa's award-winning value-based airline. FastJet, value, choice, flexibility.
We understand that not everybody has got spare pennies to rub together at the end of the month. We're introducing an initiative called Gift an Explorer.
So that those with lots of pennies can gift a Wild Earth Explorer access to those with fewer.
We're aiming for 250 gifts, but the more the merrier.
You can nominate a recipient or keep it anonymous.
It's a great way to share the Wild Earth mission with other nature lovers around the world.
Well, the rhino beginning to settle again now. The youngsters decided whatever the disturbance was not too concerning. Plopped back down again. The male looks as if he's relaxing a little bit, but you can see those ears very much pointed in the direction that whatever the disturbance was. I love the way they're constantly moving, always like little radar dishes. And Sasha, you asked what the importance of ear shape was in animals. And does it mean that their hearing is very good? Absolutely, it does. It's a very important sense. Remember, eyesight is not as important in the animal kingdom for many animals. Primary sense is smell and then also hearing. Particularly for something like a rhino that we know doesn't have very good eyesight. It's normally got its head down in the ground, feeding on grass. A lot of the antelope species are doing the same thing, or if they're browsing animals like nyalas and kudus, they're generally preferring thicker vegetation and feeding on leaves. So eyesight is probably, well, is not their primary sense. They rely very much on smell and hearing danger creeping up on them. So it is normally very much shaped to funnel sound in, and normally lots of hairs close to the base just to filter some of the ambient noise and enable them to focus on potential danger. It's something that we use very regularly whilst walking in the bush as well. Our eyesight is good, but it's not as honed as some animals. And certainly, speaking from experience, you often hear danger long before you see it, or not necessarily danger, but the presence of another animal, be it the rustle of some leaves, a cracking branch, something feeding. We very much rely on our hearing out in the bush. Not so much smell for humans, of course, but primary sense for most animals, smell, and then hearing also vitally important. Not just for danger, but for communicating with each other as well. Of course, the sounds that we hear are just a small proportion of the sounds that are created, and they travel over much longer distances than we would be able to hear over. As I say, it's a lovely thing that you can do with your own ears. If you just cup your hands behind your ears to sort of increase the bowl of your ears of those pinnae, you can hear some 20 to 30% more, and it's always a lovely experience to do that whilst out on a game drive. You used to often do that if you're sitting in and amongst a herd of elephants, or even just watching a rhino feeding. If you cup your ears and angle um, the, the the position of your ears and your head towards where the noise is coming from, you can hear so much more. You can hear the sort of the chomping, the chewing, subtle little communications that you might otherwise have missed. You can hear more bird calls, helps you to triangulate where sound is coming from. Hilary B, it seems that you're new to our channel and you've thoroughly enjoyed listening to all of the information that you've heard and some of the visuals. I'm very, very glad that you've enjoyed it. I think today has been a really good day. We've had a really interesting balance of just ultimate cuteness, some really amazing sightings like this. But say for me, the highlight very much those elephants at Juma. These poor dogs having a bit of a play as well. It's definitely been a day to play in the mud, it seems, today. But Hilary B, I'm glad you found us, and I hope you will return regularly and that you've enjoyed what you've heard. Joe McClellan also commenting on these magnificent views of these rhinos. We do lucky enough to see rhino here at Mantis Founders Lodge relatively regularly, but they often come and have a drink and disappear. It's been lovely to be able to watch them for a significant period of time. Very, very special. I do very much sense that this rhino bull is guarding his females at the moment. He's been constantly checking over in that direction. Doesn't seem super relaxed. Everybody else is lying down and chilling. He's very much standing to attention. Doing a good job. Being a good rhino bull. Penelope Kenyon, yes, maybe we should rename this rhino pan. There are quite a few rhino pans in game reserves, but this one's certainly living up to that name. But sadly, we're almost out of time. We are into the last minute of today's live at the Waterhole, but don't forget, if you are enjoying what you see, we will be back again tomorrow, 12:30 till 2:30 in Central African time. And from here, of course, you can join the rest of the team on safari and hopefully join us for the sunset safari, where who knows what they will see. I hope for your sake and their sake it is exciting as it has been today. Definite highlight for me was watching those Ellies at Juma and that little baby who had all the zest in the world, and I think now has at least an additional 3 tons of mud stuck to his skin. But I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thanks very much for joining us and for me, for the team in Joburg, and we will do it all again tomorrow.